wow, here's where it came to an end. Here's where 40 people lost their lives for this country to make sure that others wouldn't be hurt that day.
The plane came over top of this hill, inverted, upside down, flying over 500 miles an hour. So it was at full throttle. It went in the ground, it shook the school at Shanksville, which is about 1.5 miles away. The first responders that I've talked to, they were told, we've got a plane in the ground. They came to the site looking for plane remains. They found nothing. They found a crater, no sound, wind blowing just like this.
There's really hasn't been a day that's gone by that I don't think about Flight 93 and the passengers and crews and the families. See, those are new. You could never see that from here. On September 11th, 2001, got a message from my dad on our answering machine, and he said, give me a call. He said, I think this might be our property. So I called him and I said, are you sure? And he said, I've seen the video over and over again. I would always recognize those trees, those hemlocks, those are ours. But there's the bowl, you can see where the hemlocks were taken out. There's no book you can read on how to deal with your land becoming a mass gravesite. Well, it was always very quiet, very peaceful. It was always a place that you felt safe. It just never ceases to amaze me that people are still drawn to this place.
Oh, that is awesome.
I think that they come here to heal.
I think when those things happen, that it doesn't hurt to help them and let them know that they're in our prayers and our thoughts.
And I think what the passengers and crew did that day just really struck a chord and still strikes a chord with people.
There's a lot of meaning here. And people don't realize, terrorists coming in this area, and the people fought and then gave their lives to get rid of these people that are trying to kill us.
We've always wanted to make a trip over here, and thank God it just became true today. This is where it all started, and I wanted to see where it all started, where the Americans fought back.
They stop and think about, is that something that I could do? If the person next to me is trying to do harm to the other passengers or the crew, what would I do?
Gave up their lives for us, and so that other people would be safe.
It's a very emotional site.
And it's always quiet. You don't hear a lot of chatter even up here. People are very respectful, and they just they look on that field in awe.
People come here, and I don't think they know what to expect. This wall is an opportunity for our visitors, the owners of this park, to express their thoughts and feelings about this event. From a sad day emerged a lot of heroes, those who helped and those who perished. Most importantly was the emergence of a stronger nation. Let us not ever, ever forget what happened here or in this country, and let us not forget the heroes of that fateful day.
The future of it now is we had signed the property over, we had sold it last summer. That memorial's going to be here soon. I didn't realize they were going to be that close to the actual crash site. First phase will be unveiled on September 11th of this year.
It's going to be more emotional shortly, because when you are closer to that ground and you have a chance to see the wall of names, you're going to be struck.
We were taken hostage. We basically had nothing, the clothes on our backs, and it didn't change a whole lot the whole year. I remember one day telling Martin, I feel more like an animal than a human being.
It's been 10 years since Gracia and her husband, Martin Burnham, were kidnapped by militant Muslims.
So I wasn't carrying bookshelves around, but I was carrying loads. And I was fit then, and I was strong, because you had to be strong or you died. Martin was a pilot for a New Tribes mission. We called him a jungle pilot. His job was to carry people and supplies into very remote places in the world, and we chose to work in the Philippines. We'd been there for 16 years and we loved our ministry, if you want to call it. Martin loved what he was doing. Our 3 children were born in the Philippines. In 2001, we went to celebrate our wedding anniversary at a little resort off the island of Palawan. We were just in the wrong place at the wrong time.
My mom's friend came over and she said, "Hey, where are your brothers? We need to talk about something." I said, "Is everything okay?" And she said, "Yeah, it's fine."
And militant Muslims raided Dos Palmas and took 20 of us hostage. And for the next year, we ran for our lives through the jungle with the Philippine military trying to rescue us. As our time in the jungle went on, we realized what they wanted was a ransom. They wanted money so they could buy more weapons and continue their jihad.
An Arabic word meaning holy war or struggle against unbelievers. It was an almost unknown word to the Western world. That all changed on 9/11.
One morning, one of the leaders, Abu Sulaiman, had Martin come over to his hammock, and they were listening to Voice of America on a transistor radio. And Martin just patted the ground as I walked up and said, "Sit down here, something awful has happened in America." And I began to listen to the people from New York City who were talking about the Twin Towers. And then that was the end of it. They turned their radios off and we never heard another thing. So our hearts were just so heavy. All we knew was something awful had happened in America. Of course, they were all rejoicing. They were jumping around. They'd pulled one over on America.
After that, I remember, you know, my mom and dad being in the news a lot more, and them being able to tie in, you know, Al-Qaeda terrorists with ties to Osama bin Laden.
To whom the Abu Sayyaf were connected, but they were feared in their own right for their kidnappings, brutality, and beheadings.
We witnessed the atrocities that these men committed against even other Muslims when we passed through villages. We never saw the rapes and the beheadings, but we saw the guys splattered with blood after the beheadings.
I just remember hoping that she didn't feel like it was her fault. And later, hearing that she did. So I just remember that being my prayer.
I would have hard days in the jungle. I would just be despairing and depressed, and it would be horrible. And Martin would say things like, "Gracia, when we get out of here, your kids are going to need their mother back. They're not going to need their mother minus her mind, or they're not going to be their mother plus a bunch of bitterness. They're going to need their mother back." And I used to hang on to that.
Seeing them and seeing their strength was new. Being able to see that in their proof of life and seeing them together was encouraging.
In their 12 months of captivity, the Burnhams had survived 16 gun battles between their captors and the Philippine Army. They were the only 2 remaining captives, but the 17th gun battle changed their lives forever.
They came over the hill and they just opened fire on us. And right away I was shot in the leg and rolled out of the hammock and slid down the mountain and came to rest beside Martin. And I looked over at him and he was bleeding from his chest. You've heard that term, the weight of death. I think that's what I felt, but I didn't know. I'd never watched a person die before.
Gracia saw Martin die that day. She was rescued and forced to leave her husband on that hill in the Philippine jungle. His body was later retrieved for a proper burial.
It was a lot more strength from her than I ever expected.
And God actually, I think, flooded my heart with joy. And I came home so happy that some people were offended.
Who was such a wonderful young man. He was a great kid, never got himself in trouble that we found out about. He was too busy playing sports to get in trouble.
Wells became interested in the fire department from a very young age, largely because he was following in his father's footsteps.
When he turned 16, he joined our firehouse, Empire Hook and Ladder Company, #1 in Upper Nyack.
Number 36, 36.
Then I had the 2 men of our household running out the door when the fire bells rang.
He was just a fun guy. He was always fun to be around, a genuine asset to our community and an asset to our firehouse.
He became an equities trader, and he really enjoyed that. He liked trading stocks, and he was good at it. I was at home on September 11, and the phone rang. And it was my older brother down in Virginia. He said, "Are you watching TV?" I said, "No." He said, "Turn on the TV." "Why?" "Because a plane just hit the North Tower." I said, "Well, thank God Wells is in the South Tower."
We are just currently getting a look at the World Trade Center. We have something that has happened here.
I got on the phone, and the secretary said, "Allison, Wells just called. He wanted me to tell you he's all right." I said, "Wells? Well, why wouldn't Wells be all right?" And she said, "Don't you know?" And I said, "No, what?" She said, "The World Trade Center's been hit."
I saw the second plane hit the South Tower, and I didn't know what to think.
And then I realized that I had a message on my cell phone. It was Wells calling me saying,
"Mom, this is Wells. I want you to know that I'm okay."
That was what was in my head, all, with hope.
On that last day of his life, he took off his equities trader hat, put it down on the desk, figuratively picked up a firefighter's helmet, and he went to work.
He carried an African-American woman over his shoulder from the 104th, well, from the sky lobby, 78th floor down to about the 61st floor because she couldn't walk.
He put all that training to its highest and best use.
He went back at least 2, maybe 3 times up there to get people off. The estimates vary on how many people he saved.
It looks like the North Tower of the World Trade Center has just completely collapsed. Where the building once stood, there is nothing but smoke.
Made it down to the lobby and was going to go back up with a fire lieutenant, 2 other firefighters, and the tools necessary to lift some of the slabs of marble and the beams of steel to help extricate some of these people who were trapped up there and still alive. But he was in the lobby with them when the building collapsed.
The second tower of the World Trade Center has just completely collapsed.
And he was lost. He was doing the job he knew he had to do. He did his duty, as we say in the fire services. And I thank God for that. I thank God for that.
The number of casualties will be more than any of us can bear, ultimately.
People say to us that we raised him too well. And I told them no. That boy came with the software installed. Good Lord put him here for a purpose. Said at some point, I'm going to need you, Wells, at some point. Unfortunately, he was only 24 years into his life.
Is that it? Is that going to be the end of memory? Do people forget about him? What happens now? It was just the most desolate feeling.
We started the Wells Remy Crowther Charitable Trust. And we started that in his name to preserve his memory and, more importantly, to preserve his legacy. His legacy is what he did in that last hour of his life. Those people whose lives he saved. His heroism. That's his legacy. My job, and I see it as my job for the rest of my life, is to tell his story to as many people as I possibly can.
I was practicing this evening a violin concerto that was written for me. There's healing needed everywhere, and hopefully this music will be a part of accomplishing that.